nearlydanish.com.
What happened to Denmark after the Lost War of 1864? The War of 1864 was a disaster for Denmark. The country lost three important areas, Schleswig, Holstein, and Lauenburg, to Prussia and Austria. Denmark didn't just lose land, it also lost its pride, confidence, and hope of being a major power in Europe. Back home, politics changed. The National Liberal politicians who had led Denmark into the war lost their influence. Wealthy landowners took charge instead. They sought to preserve their own power and restrict democracy. In 1866, they created a new constitution that gave more power to the king and the richer citizens. They controlled most of the landsting, the upper house of parliament. Ordinary people still got to vote for the Folketing, the lower house, but now the two houses represented very different groups of people. This made political fights between them almost certain. Why did so many Danes leave their country? In 1868, thousands began leaving Denmark for the United States. Over the next decades, more than 300,000 Danes would emigrate. For some, it was poverty that drove them out. For others, the rigid social order. America promised land, higher wages, and new beginnings. Meanwhile, politics hardened at home. By 1870, the split between conservatives and farmers had become two clear camps. Højre, right, the party of landowners, and Venstre, left, the party of farmers. This was the birth of Denmark's party system, and of the constitutional struggle that would dominate politics for decades. How did industrialization and social movements transform Denmark in the 1870s? The 1870s brought profound change. Factories and workshops sprang up, and people moved from the countryside to the city. Denmark remained agricultural, but industry was beginning to take hold. At the same time, farming itself was in crisis. By the mid-1870s, cheap grain from the United States and Eastern Europe flooded Europe thanks to railroads and steamships. Prices collapsed. Danish farmers responded with innovation. They shifted to animal production. Cows and pigs filled the farms, and soon butter and bacon became the nation's new exports. The world beyond Denmark was changing too. In 1871, Otto von Bismarck forged the German Empire. Suddenly, Denmark faced a powerful new neighbour. That same year, two movements were born at home. The Danish Women's Society became the country's first women's organisation, demanding education and rights for women. And the International Workers' Association for Denmark was founded, joining the global socialist movement and calling for better wages, shorter hours, and safer conditions. Their voices grew louder. In 1872, thousands of workers gathered at Copenhagen's Fælleden. Police and soldiers broke up the demonstration in what became the Battle of Fælleden. No one died, but many were arrested, a warning of the state's fear of organised labour. In 1875, two breakthroughs came. JBS Estrup of Højre became Prime Minister with the King's backing, ruling through provisional laws for decades, while women won the right to take the student exam and attend universities. Change was coming from both above and below. And far to the north, from 1875 to 1910, the fishing village of Skagen became a haven for artists like Anna Ancher, Michael Ancher, and P.S. Krøyer, who painted the sea, the sand, and the northern light. How did new parties and rights emerge in the late 1870s and 1880s? The late 1870s brought political breakthroughs. In 1877, reformer Nathalie Zahler founded her own school in Copenhagen, advancing women's education. In 1878, the Social Democrats became an independent party, and in 1880, married women finally gained control over their own wages. By 1884, two Social Democrats entered the Folketing, giving workers a direct voice in Parliament for the first time. Still, Estrup's government held firm. Supported by the king, he continued to govern through provisional laws. Danish democracy was alive, but under strain. What new paths opened for farmers, workers, and culture in the 1890s? The 1890s were years of both conflict and cooperation. For farmers, the cooperative movement arrived in 1890. They built cooperative dairies and slaughterhouses where every member had one vote, regardless of their wealth. This system improved efficiency and quality, and by 1890 to 1914, more than half of Denmark's butter and bacon exports went to Great Britain. The decade also marked the first significant steps toward the establishment of the welfare state. In 1892, Denmark carried out its last execution in peacetime. In 1893, the state began subsidising health insurance funds, helping people pay for medical care. Workers gained cultural and political voice too. In 1894, the first college songbook was published, filled with patriotic songs and hymns, many by Grundtvig. But the labour market was tense. Strikes and lockouts threatened stability. It all came to a head in 1899, when unions and employers signed the September Agreement. Employers kept the right to lead and allocate work. Workers secured the right to organise, negotiate and strike. The deal became known as the Labour Market Constitution, the foundation of the Danish labour market model still used today. Around 1900, a new belief spread that culture, art and science were not luxuries, but necessary for the well-being of every citizen. How did modernisation accelerate after 1900? Around 1900, Denmark entered the modern age. The first films were shot, and artist Wilhelm Hammershøi painted interior from Strandgade 30. At the same time, the folk high school movement lost influence as industrialization drew more people to the cities. The welfare state also developed in earnest in Denmark. It became important to strengthen cultural life, science and art, as an active cultural life was considered a prerequisite for the well-being of an individual. In 1901, the system change finally brought true parliamentarism. The king was forced to accept that only the Folketing could decide who governed. No government could survive with a majority against it. Reforms followed. In 1903, a permanent income tax was introduced, and public high schools opened to girls. In 1905, the radical left split from Venstre, supported by small farmers and academics. Culture flourished too. In 1906, Nordisk Film was founded, soon becoming one of the most important film studios in the world. How did Denmark face the years before World War I? The early 1910s brought new struggles and connections. In 1910, Copenhagen hosted an International Socialist Women's Conference, where delegates decided to create International Women's Day. That same year, the Conciliation Institution was established to mediate labour disputes before they erupted into strikes. In 1912, Danish Americans bought part of Rebuild Bakker, where they gathered to celebrate the United States Independence Day on July 4th, a tradition that still continues. Also in 1912, explorer Knud Rasmussen launched his Thule expeditions, which mapped Greenland and recorded Inuit culture. The cultural life of Denmark was thriving. In 1913, the statue of the Little Mermaid was unveiled in Copenhagen harbour. Only 125 centimetres tall, it became one of Denmark's most famous landmarks. But the world was changing fast. In 1914, World War I erupted. Denmark remained neutral but was pressured by Germany to lay mines in its waters to block British ships from the Baltic. At home, inequality was clear. Men in industry earned 55 øre per hour, while women earned only 30 øre. And yet, even in that tense year, Copenhagen's Tivoli Gardens opened its wooden roller coaster, a symbol of everyday joy in uncertain times. What did these 50 years mean for Denmark? Between 1864 and 1914, Denmark changed completely. Out of military defeat came political struggle, new rights for workers and women, industrial growth, and a flourishing culture. The country became smaller, but also more democratic, more modern, and better prepared for the challenges of the 20th century. If you enjoyed this journey through Denmark's past, Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story here on Nearly Danish.
NearlyDanish.com